I watched a video recently where a white South African man claimed that people with European blood, even mixed people, are less violent. He actually attempted to make people believe that morality comes from blood or DNA. That if you have European ancestry, you are automatically civilized. Now that's utter nonsense. Because Europeans have been proven to be the most barbaric and violent in history to date. His lie is nothing more than deflection, moral cowardice, and above all, intellectually bankrupt. Imagine believing you're superior because of hair, skin color, eyes. That's the dumbest thing you and your violent ancestors could have believed. So let's look at what history shows. King Leopold of Belgium ruled Congo as his personal business venture, a side hustle that between 1885 to 1908, an amount of between 10 and 15 million people died from forced labor, starvation, disease. Villages were destroyed, hands were cut off to enforce rubber quotas. The images are out there online. Now, was this less violent? Probably if you compare it to World War I and World War II, largely European wars. During World War I, about 20 million people dead, and World War II, about 70 to 85 million people killed worldwide. Let's not forget about the Transatlantic Slave Trade. Around 12 to 15 million Africans shipped across the ocean. Millions were died en route to whichever colony they were being shipped off to. I mean, Britain sent the worst of its worst, its convicts, to Australia. Between 1788 and 1868, they sent about 160,000 convicts, and this means that whole generations came from criminal stock. These same descendants, today, recently a few weeks ago, protest immigration, standing on stolen land and pretending to be the original gatekeepers. The irony is heavy. For centuries, European states used violence as a foundation for power. Entire nations were built this way, on violence. Mind you, Europe is not just linked to past violence. It is the single largest cause of global mass displacement today. Borders were drawn, native people forced out, and economies were distorted in their favor, of course. Even today, many modern refugee crises trace back to colonial legacies. Conflicts in Africa, in Asia, Middle East are deeply tied to European interference and resource theft. So when people claim European blood equals peace, history as well as contemporary times disagrees loudly. Now let's look at the present. White people commit crime. It's documented. It's recorded. And they do it in large numbers. So let's be clear. When this South African man said Europe, he meant white. Not first, second or third generation European immigrants. And Europe exported their whiteness to America. So in the United States, FBI stats consistently show that huge numbers, close to 50% of violent crime arrests are white offenders. Murder, assault, theft, you name it. In England and Wales, white people make up the majority of those arrested. Knife crime, domestic violence, theft, etc., etc. Now in Australia, police data shows hundreds of thousands of offenders every year, most of them white. Assault, poverty, crime, property crime, domestic violence, and the list goes on. So whiteness doesn't make you immune to committing violence. European blood doesn't cancel crime. Let's look at the South African context. So in South Africa, the myth becomes even more insulting. Apartheid was white designed and white enforced. Entire communities were uprooted. Families broken, people killed. That is not less violent. Many who still benefit from that system, like this very person who said that European DNA makes people less violent, pretend that violence belongs to everybody else. And the truth is that violence in South Africa is shaped by poverty, inequality, trauma, and not blood. So, why push this nonsense? Why allow this myth to survive? It's purely to avoid accountability. If you say that your group is naturally civilized, you don't need to admit that there is any wrongdoing. It's psychological armor to protect the ego at all cost. Facing the truth of European history is uncomfortable, so it's easier to say we are superior. And based on this logic, if you feel small as a person, just claim racial superiority, boom, ego fixed. This is purely to shift blame onto the victims. And this belief is dangerous. It keeps racism alive. It tells people morality comes from skin tone, not from choice. It stops us from seeing real causes of crime, which is poverty, it's inequality, it's trauma. It protects privilege and keeps oppression in place. It hides the truth, and that is that every group commits violence. And Europeans bags first place and holds an undefeated record in this category. So to break this cycle, we need to teach full history, including colonial crimes, European violence, and call it for what it is. It's savage subjugation. It's merciless, methodical massacres. Stop sanitizing the past. No, colonialism wasn't a favor. And we are not grateful for apartheid or any colonizing system or so-called civilization because of the infrastructure left behind. Infrastructure was always built on the blood, sweat, tears, and brutal oppression of the non-white people that only benefited white people. So acknowledge that white people commit violent crimes too, historically and today. Morality doesn't come from DNA. Your phenotype doesn't make you peaceful. However, justice, fairness, and accountability is what makes you peaceful.